Coach Tony.
Okay, folks, we're back, and we are talking about parental criticism. And you know what? Sometimes we just can't say it any better than the kids. And apparently, I am told that John found his son, and his son is on the line. So we're going to call you John's son. Do not use your name, but you're on Let Them Play, kid. How you doing today?
Oh, first of all, it's me. I'm just giving you the heads up. My son was listening, and I thought it'd be a good idea to you have him ask a couple questions and see how he feels about the whole thing.
Yeah, well, let's assume you didn't coach your kid during the commercial break. So do me a favor, put him on the line, and put him on the line.
Hello?
Hi. Listen, don't say your name. All right, but is Dad in the room?
Yes.
You may now tell Dad to leave the room right now. Tell your father to leave.
Daddy, Uncle Tony said to leave.
So here's what we got.
He left the room.
Gotcha. So let me ask you a question here. As a coach, regardless of what sport you're playing, is your dad harder on you than he is on the other kids?
Yes, sometimes he is.
Okay. That's okay. Now, as his son, do you think he is being harder on you? Do you think he should lighten up on you? Do you think he's just trying to teach you more? Why do you think he's harder on you than he's harder on the other kids?
Well, because he wants me to learn how to become a better player, but sometimes he's a little too hard.
Sometimes he's a little too hard. All right, so listen, you heard it here. All right, so even though it's the best of intentions, we now have proof that it is viewed by the kids as being a little too hard. And I certainly appreciate John opening himself up for some criticism and putting his son on the phone to kind of clarify that. Before we get back to emails, I understand we have Frank on the line. All right, Frank, hey, you're on Let Them Play.
Hey, Coach Tony, how are you?
I'm doing great. What's going on this morning?
I got 2 points I'd like to bring up. One, I think there has to be some sort of positive reinforcement when critiquing, particularly your own son. There's got to be something positive that they know you're trying to help them, that everything is not beating them over the head all the time. And the other point I think we have to give these kids a little bit more credit, that I think they can decipher between actual criticism and parents trying to help them instead of beating them over the head. I think these kids understand that when they make a mistake, there's some parental figure is going to be there to try to help them. And I think they're tougher skinned than most people give them credit for.
You know what? I got to tell you, I think at a certain age you're right. But when you're talking about kids that are, let's say, below the age of 12, and I don't know why I throw that magic number out there, but let's just use that one. I think below the age of 12, I don't know if I necessarily buy it. I got to tell you, because kids are, listen, somebody breaks a glass in the house. That's a pretty obvious, hey, I made a mistake and it's okay. When kids make mistakes, their first inclination is to try to cover them up. So I think as a parent, even if you're the coach, when you do criticize, I think their first reaction is to get really defensive about it. And we're the adults, and so we're looking at it very pragmatically and very logically, and we're just simply saying, you made a mistake, here's how you fix it. Kids really aren't wired that way, and I don't think they really get it as much. And, having 3 kids, ranging from ages 10 now to about to be 14, I'm really starting to see some subtleties and some differences in talking, whether it's a boy or a girl, doesn't matter, but let's just call it a man-to-man relationship where you're really trying to do it as a coach and a player instead of a father and a daughter or a father and a son or a mother. I'm not going to get into the whole gender thing. I'm not necessarily sure that the kids have as tough a skin as we think at those younger ages. I think they really do take a lot of that criticism to heart. And, listen, tell me you haven't seen a kid get, let's even say, positively instructed by their parent/coach, and they don't react, and they don't kind of go into a little bit of a shell. I see it all the time. And it kind of goes, it really is a self-defeating exercise where you want them to improve, but because of the way that you're delivering that message, they kind of retract a little bit.
Now, when you played, did you ever have a coach that was overly critical, or your father, and were you able to handle it?
Well, you know what? Coaches, I got to tell you, and I played for a lot of coaches, and I will say that because I was a better player, I was not really criticized as much as a player until I got into the Bayside Yankees organization, and that was because there were expectations that were just, completely on a different level. But going back to the parent thing, I could have a day where I went 3 for 4, and I would be asked about the one time that I made an out. And, it got to the point where I really would rather not. It got to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't even want to talk about the game.
Well,
it was a self-satisfaction. I'm sorry?
Did it destroy you? Or were you on enough to say, you know what, I understand, I'm kind of tuning him out? It didn't destroy you.
You know what? No, it didn't destroy me. But I will tell you, this stuff happened more when I was older. When I was younger, and I think I speak for a lot of folks that are in my generation, when my parents would come to the game, it was really more the exception than the rule. I don't want to say they didn't care, but our parents didn't get as wrapped up in our activities, nowhere near to the level that we as parents are getting wrapped up in our own kids. I mean, that's just a fact. So when I was younger and at a more impressionable age, I really didn't have to deal with as much of that stuff. So it really didn't have as much of an impact. But yeah, I think you kind of alluded to it. As I was older, and I realized that, when I'm away at college, for example, and you have a 3 for 4 game, and mom or dad only wants to talk about when you failed. You can, you're old enough and strong enough and have enough will to say, I'm just not going to talk about the game. So it didn't destroy me, but you know what? If I had a dad who was more overbearing at a younger age, I think it would have certainly had more of an impact. So thanks for the call. As always, I appreciate the thoughts, and I think it's a good point. At some age, your kids are going to develop some thick skin, and I certainly understand that. That it has, it's a kid-to-kid thing, but there's an age where, they step up and kind of handle things on their own. So I appreciate the call, Frank. We got time for another call? We actually go to our buddy Nooch, the reigning president of the Mongo Nation. Hey, Nooch, you're on Let Them Play.
Hey, Coach Tony, thanks for taking my call.
Great, man. What do you think about all this?
I think it's great, but I got a little bit of a twist to throw at you. I want to get your opinion on it.
Go ahead.
Okay, we're talking about, coaching our kids and criticizing our kids, especially, let's say, in baseball. And I think, as a coach, after a while what happens, baseball has isolated plays. So when your kid comes into that isolated play, let's say, and they may make a mistake, for instance, you're criticizing the mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I think in certain cases is every once in a while you need to take a step back and maybe, I don't want to say, sometimes maybe not coach. And I'll give you an example. For instance, I had one year that I didn't coach. And I noticed that I was the same way on my son when I was coaching. I was hard on him, criticizing, let's say, the mistakes. Not getting on him every time, but that's the only time I brought something up, like we were talking about. You could have done this and you could have done that. And what I did is I took a step back and I actually didn't coach. And the reason why I thought it was effective is I could now isolate my son through the whole game. Whereas when you're coaching, you're responsible for the whole team. So you're only watching your son make these plays at specific times, whereas you're responsible for the rest of the kids so you can teach them some of the things that they're not doing or they are doing. And I wanted to get your thoughts on something like that where, again, we're criticizing because we're on them, granted, only for those particular plays that they make, especially in baseball. I wanted to get your thoughts on something like that.
I think that's a great point. I'm not sure how it fits into the whole discussion, but I love what you're bringing up because, like you said, one of my biggest frustrations as a coach, and one of the reasons I do what I do is because as a coach dealing with parents, that's one of my favorite lines. And you have to say that, by the way, if you're a coach, I'm going to paraphrase. You got to say this much better. I'm going to try to do it the right way. When a parent gives you a concern and it's only about their kid, at some point you have to inform them. Guess what, mom or dad? You have the luxury of worrying about just your kid.
Exactly.
I have to worry about, and think about it, if you coach a youth football team, you may have to be worrying about as many as 40 kids. And on the small side for a team sport, basketball, let's say, I got to worry about 10 or 12 kids. So yes, you will see things that I do not see. But
my point on that is to say that maybe we are criticizing our kids as coaches a little bit harder because we see the mistakes that they shouldn't have made only in isolated incidents. That's really my point.
Well, what did you think when you watched it when you're watching that same sport? You watch a baseball game as a dad. Is it easier? Are you saying it's easier for you to put it in perspective as in, hey, that was one thing that happened in the course of a whole game?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm able to almost teach a little bit more to my son, obviously, because what I can do is watch some of the things that maybe happened instead of just the one thing that he did right where, let's say he gets a base hit and doesn't round the base, for instance, just as a silly example, okay? The great thing is he got a base hit. As a coach, I probably would be on him saying, you didn't round the bag.
Yeah.
Now, as a dad, what I may look at, because I was able to focus more on him, I could say, you know, what I really liked was the way you took that pitch to the left side or the right side, or the way you got your hands out, or the way, do you like that pitch? It was a little bit low. Normal, you know, things like that I think will come up. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't coach. What I'm just saying every once in a while is maybe we're on them so much because of our expectations. And again, because we isolate each particular play, and we kind of build it up a little bit more when it is our kid.
And you just kind of outlined the basis of this hokey thing that we call the praise sandwich. And I think you just did. I don't know if you were trying to do it, but you took this idea of, hey, you took a curveball to right. What a great job.
Right.
And guess what? The next time if that guy bobbles the ball and you're rounding the bag, you got a shot. You got a shot at second base, kid. And with your speed, that's something. Yeah. And that kid you can't even find the criticism in that statement. That's a great point. And like I said, if you've read my book or learned something from the show, then I'm proud of myself. If not, then guess what, Dad Coach Nooch, president of Mongo Nation, take a bow, because that's part of smelling the roses. And as always, I appreciate the call. It's a great point. Got maybe kind of time for another email or two. Let's see. All right, well, I tell you what. I really do appreciate the thoughts today, folks, because, this is how we solve the problems. And I'm going to go to an email I got here from Truthful in Mount Vernon, who writes in and says, hey, Coach Tony, the simple fact is this. I do get on my kid more than I do other kids. But, hey, I'm just more comfortable correcting my own kid, and I don't have to worry about positioning myself properly when I do it. After all, my wife isn't going to sue me for yelling at my kid on the field. Okay, well, my wife might. I don't know how else to say this. It is a very, very good point that you bring up. And I think that's part of it also. You have this whole notion of it is your kid, and there's a comfort level. I think the important part is don't confuse comfort level with a lack of compassion. I'm guilty of it. I think we're all guilty of it when we talk to our kids and we compare our communication with our kids to the way we communicate with other kids or other people. Sometimes, whether you're having an argument with your wife or your kid, it's this stupid notion of, hey, I love you, so don't get on me for how I position. I'm just going to give you the information. Well, that's kind of a cheap shot, and it's relatively what I'll call unfair to the kid. Don't be overly critical of the kid just because you love him and you don't have to worry about how you position it. So, Truthful in Mount Vernon, you know what? Thanks for being truthful, but use that as an opportunity to improve the relationship you got with your kid. Nooch calls in and gives us a great example of a way you can do this with your kid. Find something good that they do, and by all means, highlight that and then slip your criticism in there. Now, by the way, folks, next week we're going to be talking about, because Tuesday, by the way, March 1st, is National Sportsmanship Day. And my colleagues over at the Institute for International Sport in Rhode Island and the Center for Sports Parenting are encouraging good sportsmanship. So next week, we're going to talk about the state of sportsmanship in America and how far or lack of how far we've come over the past, couple of decades. So, you know what? Another hour has passed us by. As always, I appreciate the phone calls, the emails, the blogging. Hey, we're all going to solve these problems together, folks. So I do appreciate the input. That's going to do it for me. We'll